Hi everyone, thanks for being here. Welcome again to those of you who are new to the call. I think Gabriel this may be Gabriel's first one. Test thinks like Gabriel is like super contributor, but I don't know if I've seen you on one of these calls before. DJ's just volunteered to be Captain Links. I know he hasn't, damn it. I would say Eric should be Captain Links, but actually he's got too much to actually do. So to demonstrate, if anyone wants to just post links as we're talking, that would be great in the chat on the side. I'm going to save, I'm not going to volunteer someone else for that horrific job. Hello, Chad and Rahul. I don't know if either of you have been on calls as well before. It's good to see you both. Yeah, Eli's not here. Tim is here, but not on video. So maybe Tim's in charge. Tim, you're officially Captain Links. Congratulations. I'm so sorry. So for those of you that have not been on these calls before, they generally have a theme. They start with me rambling a little bit, as you've probably already gathered. And at some point, we'll pivot towards that theme. Today's theme is going to be a sort of a continuation of the last 2 weeks of themes, but a lot more actionable. So for the last 2 weeks, and I apologize for not putting last week's video up. I realized earlier I'd just not got around to it, which is a bit of a fail by me. Chad, I'm just going to mute you. Not that you're talking, but that's just like when someone unmutes a signal, they want to say something. So it'll confuse me throughout, but welcome. So yeah, starts with a bit of rambling, moves to a point. The point is going to be about how we can improve the sort of contribution, but also maintaining experience. We've been talking a lot in the last couple of weeks about trying to make it easier for people to add their first contribution. We've been doing a lot of work on that, and we're going to demo some of that today. Last week was really great for that. Like the people on the call solved most of the problems, and then we've just gone and done a bit of work to actually implement that. So I'm hoping today we can have a similar thing. I'm going to be asking a bit more about how we can make maintaining better and give better feel for how tracks are going, and also how we can work more on the contributions side of things. So that's going to be the theme. Before we jump into that, does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to say or ask or do? Yeah, newbies are cool. Feel free to ask newbie questions, Chad. We welcome that with open arms. Cool, no one has anything. That's cool. So, excuse me, let's back up a little bit. So we've highlighted that one of the major problems with contributing to version 3 of Exercism is that the initial barrier to contribution is really, really high. And that has a whole load of negative side effects. The first is that people don't contribute. The second is that by not having an easy contribution barrier, it makes it very hard for people then to sort of progress into regular contributors and then progress into maintainers. These things have been real problems. I hoped we'd have 100, 200 people contributing to V3 now, and we don't. We have like 20 people or something contributing. But we have had hundreds of people say they want to contribute. We've just done a horrifically terrible job of converting all of the people that want to contribute into actually people who are contributing. And so we've been working hard to try and understand why that is, and we've used these calls to discuss what that looks like. We've also highlighted that one of the problems of the high bar to contribution is that people's first contributions tend to have to be quite large, which also means that maintainers have to review very large pull requests. And those pull requests are often, for lack of a better word, bad, simply because we haven't done a good enough job of communicating succinctly what somebody should be actually doing. And so a maintainer then has to go through and make a million requests for changes. That then demotivates the person that's contributed, demotivates the maintainer. So one of the things that I said we're doing last week and we've now put in place, and I think has been really successful this week, is to adopt what we're calling an optimistic merge strategy. So we are presuming that we're requiring people to put less high quality pull requests in, more partial pull requests. And if the content is good enough, we're going to merge it. And I talked a bit last time about what this means and why it's optimistic and everything else. But fundamentally, the idea is getting a base level of lots of exercises and lots of little things in place allows the community to be iterating on those things through making small additions and small improvements, which makes just the whole atmosphere better for everyone. It means it's a lot easier to contribute, a lot easier to review and maintain PRs. The whole thing is hopefully a lot more fun. So we've had some success with that over the last week. We've got, I don't know quite how many pull requests we've got in, but we've had a few good pull requests. Sasha has been working on this changelog thing that we discussed last time that you may or may not have seen. I don't know, Eric, if you could find the link to the last changelog thing, just for people that weren't on the call last time. Excuse me. Sasha hasn't got around to finishing it yet because he's been doing a load of tidy up on all sorts of stuff. Thank you for your work, Sasha. But I think we're not too far from that. But I've had some thoughts about that as well, about how we might want to change it slightly. So it's probably good that you've not done too much more on it. But yeah, the optimistic strategy has been working well. I feel like it's been more fun for people to review these pull requests. And it's been, yeah, it's just made some positive changes. But one of the other big things we've talked about is then how we guide people towards a small first contribution. And we've discussed for about 3 or 4 weeks now the idea of making like a wizard, as you used to get in olden days of software, where we take you through a few steps and you submit that, and then that creates a pull request. And we finally got around to making that. And that's forming part of something bigger, which is we've decided to put together a specific V3 mini site, for lack of a better word. It's an awful name. I really shouldn't be in charge of naming, which is a real problem as a programmer. But yeah, a mini site for V3, which is going to be sort of a hub for maintainers to give you a feel of how your track is progressing and where you can be, where you need to be doing things, maybe sort of how you're comparing with other tracks. I think a little bit of friendly competition might not be the end of the world amongst maintainers, especially when you know that esoteric tracks like Lisp are doing really well over here, and the more popular tracks are maybe doing less well. It's sort of a good kick up the butt. So yeah, we've put together this mini site, and it's also aimed to be a hub for contributors. So we're going to change the actual V3 repo itself a little bit. We're going to change the README. We're going to get people pushed towards this site. So you can go to it. It's v3.exercism.io. Someone no doubt will paste a link into the side. This is like really super like work in progress. Eric's going to be managing it and adding everything that we've got in our dream list of things to it. Eric has done programming for the first time in the last year, because he's pretty much spent the whole of the last year just doing documentation and reviewing pull requests and making exercises. So Eric's world has become significantly happier in the last week, which is great. So yeah, Eric's going to be building this out, but it builds on a huge amount of work that DJ has done. You'll see straight away that this is effectively a hard fork of the tracks.exercism.io, which has sort of been the V2 dashboard and had V3 elements in it over the last period of time. So yeah, we're building on these great foundations that DJ's put in place, but this is a hard fork, and that means that the tracks.exercism.io, which Eric can also link to, please, that's going to now be a V2 specific website. So for existing maintaining, for existing looking at stuff, that's the place to go. Tim's showing off there that the HTTPS redirect works. Thanks. So yeah, tracks is going to maintain but V2, and then there's this new V3 thing. So if you jump on that, and again, if you're watching this back, it's v3.exercism.io. You can see the general vibe bit. I'm going to get that myself. So come in, a bit of welcome text. I'm going to pad this out a bit more, maybe shove a video on there that introduces this so it's a little bit more human. Jump into a track, choose your poison. I'm jumping into Ruby to look at. And you'll see at the top straight away, there's the two sides, and we've also got new exercise on there, but the contributing and maintaining side. You'll notice that the contributing side is not exactly finished. Let's just call that a work in progress. And I want to use a wad of the time on this call to work out what that contributing side should look like, but also to discuss what the maintaining side should look like. But this is going to be all about V3. How do we get it? How do we know how well a track is doing? What are the key things? What are the sort of finger on the pulse that you need to know as a maintainer of a track? So there's obvious things like how many exercises you have in your track, But then there's also things like how many concept exercise issues do you have? So if someone comes along and wants to contribute, how easy or hard is it for them to find things? And then now with our new optimistic merging strategy, we're going to have a lot more concept exercises that are works in progress. And so for those, how many issues are there about improving those concept exercises and exposing all of these things, making those sort of very easy for maintainers to get that sort of feel for what their track looks like from different angles. Is the tooling working? Have you got a test runner deployed? Have we tested it? Have you got an analyzer made, etc., etc.? So this maintaining hub is going to be around that, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The contributing side is obviously empty at the moment. That's going to be a list of sort of, we're going to be using effectively GitHub as our database here. So it's going to be a list of all of the concepts you could work on with a click through to go and see that. It's going to have a list of all of the small contributions you can make to improve exercises. And then I'd like to talk again today about what other things we can put on there that encourage contributors to get involved. Where do we think contributors can be making their first little steps? And then the big thing that we've sort of been talking about is this wizard. If you click on the new exercise button at the top, you'll see that. This is a few boxes that you can fill in. If you've made a concept exercise, this should all look relatively familiar to you. This is our sort of first pass, our minimal viable product for it. It works by you filling out these boxes. It's sending some data to the Exercism's website API. And that's important because it will create the commit based on the user that owns the token you put in there. So if you put in if I put in my token, it's going to create a commit using my name and my email address as it is on Exercism. Then that uses an Exercism bot user to actually push that commit to the Exercism bot fork of v3. None of this is probably the way we would have initially designed it, but it's the way that GitHub's API allows. You can only do pull requests from a fork. The fork has to be owned by a user or an org or something. And we can't give arbitrary write access to any arbitrary user to a repo. So we have to have a user that's got permission to push to a repo. So that's this bot user, and it's pushing to its own fork of it for now. But we can give unsigned commits based on just an arbitrary username and email, which is slightly terrifying because I'm just going to make a whole load of commits and just assign them to DJ now and then blame him when everything goes wrong, even though it's his work. But it is quite interesting to know how easy it is to do that. And I'm definitely going to be turning on signed commits for myself over the weekend, because it would be really easy for somebody just to pretend they're doing stuff on Exercism as me, which is a pretty interesting attack vector to think about. So yeah, turn on signed commits if you don't have them on. I think it's a pretty straightforward thing to do, but it's a very sensible security measure to have on. But yeah, feel free just to use the form. If you just put half-assed PR that don't really make any sense right now, it doesn't matter. It's just going to flood branches to that thing, but I don't massively care. But the final step, once that branch has been pushed up, is that it's going to create a pull request. It will take you to a page on the GitHub website where you create the pull request. So this will actually be your username creating that pull request. We'll probably pre-populate. I don't know if we can. Can we, Eric, pre-populate the text box with some info? We probably can. We can add a comment on. Say again? The actual one on GitHub. But yeah, we can, because we can just put that in the commit message itself.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think we can.
So we can fill that in with a bit of boilerplate. And I feel like this is a really great first step at lowering that barrier. So yeah, open to feedback in that in a minute. So we're going to expand this out. So the next sort of big step is that we're going to show all of the concept exercises and let people edit them in this UI. So you'll be able to take a concept exercise and we will just give you all of the content that's there, let you edit it, and then let you push that up as another pull request. So effectively right now, you could stop using GitHub to be doing your contributions. It's not because I have an issue with GitHub. I imagine for a lot of us, we'll still just be using forks and branches and doing that ourselves. But just as a really nice way of having the right text boxes, knowing what you're supposed to edit and everything else, this is, I think, a really good way. And there's obviously loads of improvements. We need syntax highlighting in there. We need markdown stuff. There's loads of optimizations we can do to that. But I think as a first pass, I'm pretty pleased with where it's at. Does anyone have any, yeah, Sash has just asked for anyone watching this back whether the opposite holds true to what I've just said, and you could totally ignore this and just use GitHub. And yes, 100%. We are using GitHub as our database. So, and not Git, actually using GitHub effectively as our database here because of issues and things. So yeah, whatever you do, whatever you can directly do on this website, you'll be able to directly do on GitHub as well. We're just going to make it easier by you not having to worry about remembering all the different files, how it should all fit together, making sure you're conforming all the standards. This will be effectively doing a lot of that work for you. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions?
Is anybody completely awestruck by my design?
Yeah, it's beautiful. The wonders of using Bootstrap. Good. All right, that's fine. That's good. I hope the silence is exuberant happiness at this wonderful thing we've made rather than just sort of total boredom. Who knows? But yeah, so thank you all for the suggestions around this. So the thing that I do want to ask, and I am hoping somebody contributes some thoughts back on, is both the contributing tab and the maintaining tab. What, as maintainers, firstly, do you want to be seeing on that maintaining bit? What's going to make it really easy for you to understand how your track's doing, for you to be able to understand the state of your track, considering that V3 is a mono repo, which can make it quite hard, I think, at times to get a feel for that. And you know, there's a million different files tucked away in complex structures, even within your own area. What would you like to see on your maintaining bits? Brooks, welcome. I can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
I think the internet connection might not be optimal.
I don't think it's
like
optimal.
a slideshow.
Definitely. It is like a sort of weird, like one of those books where you flick through it and you see somebody making lots of movements. But I think the issue is more that you
No, those books are way faster.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Brooks sorts his life out. Does anyone else have any any thoughts on what they would like to see? Mark, I'm looking at you.
Damn. Okay. I'm looking at the site, and first of all, I like this because I like the old Tracks V2 site. I was just starting to use that while I was working on V2, and I will continue to use that. I'm wondering if maybe there's some way to get to see like the number of issues perhaps on your representative, your test runner, your analysis. I'm not sure exactly. Also, once say the representative is in the field, I think there's an issue about having to update the database with a new representation that came in, and so if we could see I'm sure this is just add to the backlog of things like that sort of stuff, so we could see how the bits are doing, not just how many concept exercises do I have. That's one part of many parts.
Yeah, so that makes total sense.
The health of the representative is like there 12 issues on it, and doesn't have 12 outstanding representations that need to be given feedback. That sort of thing.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's a really nice extension as well for something like the analyzer as well. I don't know if you've got one for this yet, but where there's a specific piece of work for every exercise to do on the analyzer, where you build effectively a little analyzer for each exercise. Something like that, where we're able to show that somehow. That would be really cool. Eric, are you able to jot down some notes about some of this stuff?
I'm trying to keep up the chat. So
okay, that's cool. I can make notes. I'm good with that. I can make little notes for myself for later. In fact, I can do it using this. No, I'm not going to do it using the magic notes format on this. It's just going to get horribly wrong.
I can do notes, but I have to pay attention.
That's fine. You are in the chat. So yeah, that's really good. So thinking about both the issues on the representers, well, on the tooling areas, and how we expose those, and then also thinking about how we expose like which exercises have analysis, etc. So in terms of the representer, all of the feedback for the different representations is all going to be through the V3 website itself. So that sort of is a mentor problem to sort rather than a maintainer problem. So once the representer's done, that just acts as the middle piece, and then the website uses that to get the representations and then to put them into a form where mentors can give feedback on them.
I wear both hats, so.
But yeah, exactly. So yeah, for those situations like you, it's going to be a merging of the two. Whereas for analyzers, the actual analysis obviously has to be written by maintainers specifically for those things. One open question and something we need to come back to is how the comments for analyzers are going to work, because that's something we have for V2 that's worked all right, but I don't feel it's an optimal system at all. So thinking through that at some point is going to be something, but I'm going to kick that can slightly down the road. Just looking at the questions. What did Testing say? What's that issue? So Gabriel's just linked to issue 210, which is a list of all of the exercises. Yeah, so this is great. This is exactly the sort of stuff. So for each exercise, a status of it. So is it implemented? Is it not? Is there an issue made? And then any thoughts on that, any notes, and then some sort of exercise tree. Brooks, your microphone is definitely now working because I can hear background noise.
Oh dear, sorry.
No, it's good. You're very loud now. You've sort of inverted from silent to booming, but that's good. Very loud is better. But yeah, so yeah, a format like that I think is going to be critical, because then that stops all of this manual documentation, updating everything else. It's again one of the things that when we were thinking of having the status fields in the config.json for exercises. So for those of you that weren't on this call last week, we talked about having, with this optimistic merging strategy, adding a status in the config file that says what's not done about an exercise or what needs to be done. But after some disagreement on this, we decided to put like to-dos in the files as well, that you can refer to, so you can see all the things that are missing in to-dos. Did we decide something else as well about this? I can't remember. I'm sure we had some sort of status field still.
Yeah,
Eric?
I think, there was a discussion ongoing about that. Whether
DJ, do you
the,
remember this? Has DJ been paying any attention?
Yeah, I'm here. Remember what discussion?
So we talked about the putting the to-dos in the content. So we had a status after optimistic merging of concept exercises. So we knew what was left to do on a concept exercise. But there was there was status things as well as those to-dos, but I can't remember where we decided to put that information. Sasha might remember. Sasha was one.
So I remember that most of us agreed that we shouldn't put it into the config because of the maintenance hell, unless it was completely automated, because that would remove the maintenance hell. So it had to be CI if it were in the config. However, as you can already see in the current iteration of the V3 dashboard, is that a lot of the checks actually are checking if there is a to-do in a file, and then it determines some status based on that. So using to-dos would definitely work if that's the way you want to go. It would also catch changes that break the standard format, which is a good thing if you want to keep everything consistent. For example, if we were to go to the route like check for the certain header and then check if there's a to-do, it would fill that check, right? If you change the header when you shouldn't.
Yeah, kids. So I think So there's a lot of stuff we can do. Like for each exercise, we can list how many files are missing. So it's missing an after.md or it's missing an instructions. And then we can list the files that have got to-dos in them still, so they're not ready to go. And one thing I think we maybe talked about last week, I may have just put a GitHub discussion about it, is that for version, we're going to version exercises as well. We need that for representers. And then once all of those sort of to-dos and everything are sorted, an exercise then hits version 1.00, at which point then I think we should say you obviously can't have any more to-dos in files. So if there are improvements that what make at that point, we then move to more sort of standardized issues and things moving forward. So yeah, I think that's so we can have on the dashboard that Gabriel said, almost like exercise, number of missing files, number of files with to-dos. So you get quite a nice thing, and then you can click into one of those exercises and then get a sort of status on each of those things. I think that would be super powerful. So that will be, I guess, the main unit of work in this next week for Eric is sort of building out those statuses and trying to get that maintaining bit to a good point. Brooks, did you have thoughts on this? Now your microphone is working.
Yes. Can I be heard now? Am I somewhere in the middle between booming and silent?
Perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, so I was thinking, I'm really loving the dashboard in general. It might be good to have some sort of like how GitHub has a pulse thing for a repo, but maybe as like a track specific thing. So you know if there's been, so you can see like what recent things have been happening on your track, kind of like commits and issues and things, and PRs maybe.
So I was going to, yeah, it's really good. Let's talk about this for a sec. So I really need a haircut. Sasha's been making this changelog, which has been linked to a little moment ago in the chat. You can scroll up and see it if you've not. And so this is a changelog of everything that's happened on Exercism in the last week. So one of the things I was thinking was that it'd be really cool if we broke that down by track as well now. So on the track dashboard, you have a track specific changelog and you have a global changelog of everything that's been happening. So from that, you can sort of get a pulse of V3 and a pulse of the individual tracks. So whether we want to sort of fork what Sasha's done, so it, like fork the output, so it outputs both a markdown file that can live on GitHub, but also a config, also a JSON file that we then pass, or what, I don't know, I'll leave it up to someone wiser than me. But I think having some sort of changelog like that works for both tracks and also for global Exercism thing could be really powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that'd be an excellent idea.
Cool. Anything else?
Not that I can think of at the immediate moment.
Cool,
But,
that's good. So the V3 dashboard you're seeing is just a repo on GitHub, which someone's going to link to kindly for me. There are issues open on there. Please open issues for ideas you've got and thoughts you've got for how it can be improved from a maintenance point of view. Eric's going to be spending like a reasonable chunk of his weeks, certainly for the foreseeable future, on getting this good. I feel like this is a better investment of Eric's time right now than just making more exercises, because I think we've got that great body of first exercises that Eric's done that can be sort of ported across tracks, and other tracks as well have started creating their own exercises. So we've got a body of things that can be moved around and copied around. I think now just really building intelligent solutions that allow us to get easy contributions and easy maintenance to make everyone's lives as easy as possible is the best use of time. So yeah, please give Eric lots of work to do. He'll be very grateful because it means he gets to do coding. There's also the tracks dashboard. So if you do have V2 stuff that you want to do, feel free to put stuff on there as well. And they're really like, the code base for this is really simple as well. So if you do want to PR stuff, like I'm not a JavaScript developer, but I jumped into it and was able to change a line of HTML. It's probably easier thing, more advanced things you can do without too much effort as well. So like, feel free to just put PRs together as well. We'd appreciate that. So the other sort of side of this dice then is the contributing tab on there. Now this probably instinctively interests all of you a little less if you're maintainers. If you're a contributor, and welcome, then it probably interests you more. But the one thing I think that is going to be key as maintainers is that the contributions that you're receiving are the right type, and they're coming at the right, as high a frequency as possible in the least effort for you to review as possible. That's got to be our goal. So the aim of this contributions page is to make that really easy. So building on what Gabriel was sort of suggesting there, like being able to see as a contributor, these are the different exercises, these are the things that need doing. Building that out, and we were talking before about creating issues for that on GitHub. I mean, we might not need to do that now. Like, we can read those issues and have them here, but it might be a lot easier just to have those to-dos and those things in this dashboard that gives us more control over that. Something I don't have a strong opinion on, but it would be interesting to think about. I think, so Bethany put together, I saw on the Python track this week, like a nice intro to how to contribute to Python. I think it probably took from the one DJ did ages ago that I know has been copied around on tracks a little bit and improved as it's gone. I didn't read it, so it might be totally new. But having some sort of really nice emoji packed getting welcome to the X track, we're really excited to have you, like, here are the main things that we want help with on this track. You can see down below how that's broken down. I think soliciting these micro contributions is key, and once we feel like we've got this to as good a place as we're going to get it, I am then going to email out a lot of Exercism's user base and say, please help us get going with this. I think one of the decisions I've come to in the last week is that we are realistically miles away from launching. We can double down on building the website bit and everything else, but I think to have a good experience, we need a lot more exercises. We need a wider tooling across lots of tracks. We need test runners for lots of languages. And so I think realistically, we're not going to be launching this until like Q4, maybe like right at the end of the year. So what I'm thinking is that it'd be great to get like an in progress sort of version of the V3 website. So like a staging environment, I guess, as soon as possible. And that's probably like 4 to 6 weeks away or something, and have that working as a complete end-to-end solution. So have test runners, have analyzers, have representers, have everything working in that environment. Have the exercises, the concept exercises in there so people can use them. So everyone will actually be able to go and play with their tracks and get a feel for how they're working and play with each other's tracks. One of the things that I think might be really nice is that if you contribute to V3, i.e. you get a commit into the V3 repo, then you get access to the sandbox, to the staging site. And that's the criteria for being able to play with it. So it is literally for people who have contributed, but contributions can be small. If you help at all in V3, then you get to play with it and you get to have fun with it. But yeah, so that's something I've been thinking about. I've not firmed out in my head, but I think, like, with everything that's going on, trying to set arbitrary deadlines of like, let's do this really fast, just seems stupid. Like, I work better when I'm not under massive amounts of stress and pressure. And I know lots of people have been losing work and having to fight to find work, and like trying to just fit a lot into their lives at the moment in weird situations. So I think the sensible and the kind thing to do is just to try and give people like an option to move slowly, iterate a little bit each week, and get to a really great place. I have no idea what this conversation in the comments is about right now. I think DJ's just causing trouble. But yeah, I think, yeah, so I haven't really sort of like announced that or anything. This is the first time I'm sort of talking about it openly. I've chatted to like Katrina and Nick and Eric a little bit about it. And I think we all agree it's a sensible approach to take. But yeah, so that's sort of my thinking. So getting this stuff right and investing in this well now, it feels like if it takes another 2 or 3 weeks to get this to a great place, that's fine. And then we can go and email out the wider community and really solicit their contributions, knowing that we're in a place where people can actually help. So yeah, that's been a positive, I think a positive decision. I don't know what people think about it. If anyone has anything they want to say. Excellent. Gone, Brooks.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach to take in general. I think I'm not sure how many students we have contributing to Exercism, but I think that hopefully, at least for myself, I'll have lots more time to contribute in the coming weeks. I'm just in the middle of exams at the moment, so that's why it's been slower recently. But yeah, I think in general that's a good approach. It's a pretty wild time, but we'll get there. Steady progress.
Yeah, and that's it. I think I've also been really encouraged. Like, so I find the V2 thing quite hard because I feel like fundamentally V2 is broken. Like mentors can't keep up. It therefore feels like a frustrating experience. But then, you know, there are some tracks where they absolutely nail it. You know, tracks that have got great automation, or tracks that have just got really great dedicated mentors. And you know, all of the queues are actually going down. Like everything's heading in the right direction at the moment, which is positive. We see brilliant testimonials. Like there are tweets every day that random people like, I've discovered Exercism and had loads of mentoring, and it's been great. And so I feel like in my head, I've got such a focus on like, let's make V3 awesome, let's do this, that it's sometimes forget that actually V2 is itself really, really great and is still doing a good job. So, you know, I think if V2 is around for an extra 6 months to, so be it. You know, I think that's absolutely fine. It's doing a great job. It's a free service. And I think launching V3 in a place where it's really good and really exciting and really powerful, I think takes us to that point where we really are able to help people a lot more and a lot faster. Yeah, DJ's just throwing a massive curveball into problem specs there. Is that in relation to what I'm saying in terms of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so DJ, for anyone watching, asked, do I want to say something about problem specs? The way he worded that allows me to say no, which would be my joyous gut response, but I probably won't get away with that. So for those of you not in the know, problem specifications is the central hub of all of Exercism's existing exercises. Yeah, this actually ties in. So actually, just before I get to problem specs, I'm going to say just something else because I think the foundational stuff is interesting here. So the work that we're doing in terms of this V3 dashboard and how that works, this is something I don't just see as like a sprint to get us to launch. I see this as a fundamental piece of Exercism moving forward. So one of the big things we're doing with V3 is that we're bringing the maintaining side of it a lot more into the fabric of Exercism itself. So, you know, the things that you do on GitHub, they don't have to be on Exercism, but the things that you do are going to come back into Exercism. You know, you're going to be able to see change logs of tracks. You're going to be able to see those improvements. You know, the maintainers will be getting reputational credits or whatever for the work they're doing on GitHub. And I see also this other side of having a lot of things like this dashboard built into Exercism. So you can do a lot of those micro contributions actually within Exercism. You know, if you see something that needs improving, you can improve it without having to be dropped into GitHub and find the right files and doing everything else. So I think thinking of this tooling that we're building here, thinking of how Exercism, I want to actually just build an Exercism API that interacts with GitHub's API. So we're not sort of dependent just on GitHub Actions for everything, as powerful as those are, but you know, we can actually have more complex, more interesting webhooks. It's one of the really, I think, good things about Exercism is that you can just go and make a change to your track on GitHub and then it propagates through to Exercism a few seconds later. And there's a load of technology in there that we built that is pretty solid. And I think thinking about that going the other direction as well, so you can do stuff, you can just edit a typo or do some translation or whatever it is. You know, I'm excited at the moment in my head about making Exercism multilingual. I'm sorry, but like things like that you could do on the Exercism website and that feed back into GitHub. So I just put that there as just general context for where my thinking is. So let's go back to the problem specs question. So problem specs is the central repository for all of the exercises on Exercism right now. That means it holds the metadata about those exercises. So it holds things like descriptions, it holds the slugs and the names and the titles and everything like that, and the instructions for exercises. And then it also holds the data around the tests. So it holds, I think, JSON. They're JSON. Someone tell me JSON. They're JSON. Everyone's nodding at me.
Jason. Yeah.
They're JSON mappings of the different test cases. Now, those of you who are new to maintaining Exercism, and in that probably means like the last 2.5 years, maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. You probably have the perception of problem specifications being the central repository of information on Exercism that everything else can automatically generate its exercises from. And that's how it works right now for most tracks, is that they have some sort of generators that read the data from problem specifications and then turn them into tests and information for their specific language. That is like totally incidental. That was never intended by Katrina at all. It just sort of happened. And the fact that that happened is absolutely awesome. It's enabled loads of tracks to get up to speed really fast. It's a brilliant thing. It's something the community came together and made and have iterated on and have made, you know, brilliant decisions to make happen. But there was no like upfront design in that. And one of the consequences of that is that there are a lot of side effects that are negative. And one of the key side effects is that at some point, different people are going to want those central metadata tests to look different for their tracks. They're adding one small thing. So, for example, adding a Unicode example of a test into an exercise. Suddenly, you know, in C# that makes absolutely no difference. In Ruby, I think it makes absolutely no difference. That test is effectively a no-op. It doesn't change anything because strings are encoded in UTF-8. But for another language, adding a Unicode character into a test might be huge. It might be like a massive thing because that language has no concept of encoding. And it's a much more challenging thing when you can't just presume every letter is 7 bytes long in ASCII. So there are huge consequences to having a central repository of tests and to changing those once they've been built. And this has been dramatically magnified by the fact that we've used some of these exercises to be core exercises on a track, which means they're in a specific order of easiness to difficulty. And they're aimed at taking people at a journey one sort of step at a time. And so adding a test case that covers a hole in the exercise, but also inadvertently makes it significantly harder, can utterly wreck where that exercise fits into a track. So yeah, Sasha suggests 4 reasons why problem spec sucks. Yeah, that's a good idea. The problem with that is the second half of that, which is the "and how we're fixing it" bit, which is something that I don't have a solution for. And I have lots of potential solutions for this, and not just me, everyone I'm sure has lots of potential solutions for these problems, but they all have quite bad trade-offs. And the badness of the trade-offs sort of go from lots more work for maintainers to more sense of ownership to lots of forks of lots of things. There's no way to have both one central point of truth and simultaneously have multiple central points of truth from multiple languages. Like, the two things are diametrically different. And so there has to be somewhere in this some sort of compromise. But problem specs is locked, which means no one is allowed to contribute to problem specs because people get mean with each other in discussions. And it's the first time really we've ever had to do something like this, like lock a repository. And we're not locking, I think sometimes people lose track of this. We've not, or I specifically, have not locked that repository because I think people are making bad decisions or doing bad things, or because the community isn't able to, you know, make these decisions and work these problems out. I've locked the repository because people got into fights on discussions and weren't civil with each other. And that was a really incredibly frustrating thing for me to have to do because we were a really nice civil community. But the level of frustration that was bubbling up in these discussions was significant. And so we had a discussion this week where somebody said, hey, let's unlock this repository. Let's just get on with stuff. And a couple of other people weighed in saying, oh, we could just do this, or yeah, let's do this. And I'm like, well, we can do all of those things, but it's still, none of it solves the fundamental issue that as soon as we unlock this, we're just going to get exactly the same debate again. So we need a solution to this. Last time I said this, Brooks, you solved it all the week later on the next video call. So I'm going to ask for your magic just to solve everything on the next video call. But yeah, let me throw a couple of ideas out. So in fact, I'm just going to throw one idea out, which is my optimal solution, which is full of trade-offs, and you'll all hate it. But hopefully by putting a solution in place that potentially works, somehow you can all work out how to fix the trade-offs so you don't hate it so much. So imagine we've got an exercise, and that exercise has got 10 tests. At the moment, we have one config file that is just all of those tests. What I would propose is that effectively each of those tests need a way to be forked and or versioned within problem specs. So if you've got Bob and you've got, let's just say you've got one test, you've got Bob and you've got one test, and somebody wants to come along and make that test a bit more difficult. They need to be able to fork that test, not that repo or not that exercise. I think they need to be able to fork the test. They need to be able to make that more difficult or make it more easy, and then somehow with their track say, I want this version of this test, or I want these 5 tests and I want them at this version. And so in the sort of the generators that you will have in your tracks, you can basically specify not I want this exercise, but I want this exercise and I want these tests and I want these versions of it. Now, there's obviously a problem here, which is the tests have to match the instructions, and if you change a test, you diverge from the instructions. Sasha's just put so much emoji stuff into comments. I literally have no idea what that means. Somebody who's cooler than me is going to have to translate that. But I think maybe just his brain exploded. Flipping the table. Great. Is that like when I drop the mic and just walk out because I've told everything, but like the opposite? Yeah, good. So no idea. But I think that is the only way that, for me, we don't end up forking like the whole repository, like Simon said, which I think is just like a brute force resolution, although it's a perfectly good resolution. And I don't think we should fork exercises within problem specs. I mean, we could fork at that level, so you've got like 10 versions of exercises. But I think we're going to hit an infinite thing where it's like, unless individual tracks are being able to pick and mix a bit, we're effectively just going to have 50 forks where every language is forking, which then means we get back to the point where we've just got 50 points of truth rather than one. So good. Tim rage quits. So I'm putting this out there, hopefully, because you all hate little bits of it, but sort of understand the general sense of sanity that holds it together, but that you can have a massive, really civil fight about all of the bits that you hate. Use me as the thing that you hate, not each other. That'd be great. And then this time in a week, you've all solved it, and I can reopen problem specs. But yeah, the only way problem specs is going to get open is if we actually solve the problem. If we're not launching Exercism until the end of the year, then like it becomes more important. A lot of the problems go away in V3, or at least are lessened in V3, because things like core exercises aren't taken from problem specs anymore. So I'd sort of hope that there might be some magic solution that happened when we launched V3 that fixed it, but finding a better solution now is probably a good idea. Types just all hating me together. I'm fine with that. I'm like so okay with everyone all hating me as long as you don't all hate each other, because it breaks my heart to see everyone having a fight and being mean to each other. This is what break your pitch, I'm sure of it. You know, it's not good. So Sasha says, what about the idea of exercise owners that Eric and I mentioned before? So Eric and I spent a day in Chicago. Sounds a lot more glamorous than it was. Discussing this back in October, maybe. And I mean, we literally must have spent 8 hours just discussing these ideas. I just kept on dragging Eric around specialty coffee shops, and he doesn't drink coffee, and he was very unimpressed. But I had a good day.
We disagreed a lot too here.
Yeah. Uber made a lot of money out of us that day. But one of the ideas we came up with, and I think someone suggested it, maybe you, Sasha, last week, was that each exercise gets an owner, and that owner safeguards that exercise. So that exercise has a level of difficulty that it adheres to. So an exercise is designed to either have UTF-8 or not, and just be an ASCII exercise, using this example. That's specified somewhere in a document, and that document, I guess either the exercise could be owned by a person who's making those arbitrary decisions. I like that less, but having an exercise specification that is formalized into what is in and out of scope, a little bit like we've got with the concept exercises. And so when anyone proposes a change to an exercise, it's either obviously in or out of scope, and therefore the change either sticks or doesn't stick, or the document has to be updated to be in or out of scope. But at that point, each exercise has some sort of conceptual owner that gets to make that decision about that exercise. I think that's a nice idea. Like, there's obviously an issue, which is every owner needs to stay active, and so but I'm okay with that. I mean, we've got an awesome community of people that can own exercises, and if people leave, they tell us.
Pardon me, but don't you have the same problem still, where the exercise owner may not understand how changes to the exercise will affect other languages?
So yeah, massively. And this is where this idea I felt sort of worked a little bit better for V3, because it sort of doesn't matter so much in V3. It just makes a practice exercise harder or easier. And I'm okay with that. Like, we need to do stuff for V3 that means the difficulty of an exercise is generated, I guess, from the solutions that people have posted and information around that somehow. A track can also, a track, I think, is going to, as we move forward, have to make more thoughtful updates to the updates they make to the exercises as well. Once we've got things like approaches and representations, changing an exercise is a lot more destructive a thing. Like, it's going to invalidate those representations to some degree. It's going to mean that we have to do a lot more mentoring. It's going to have a lot more consequences and side effects. So I feel like I would like exercises to be stable before tracks choose to implement them, and for tracks that are implementing them to clarify what's in and out of scope at the point of implementation. And if a track wants to then just do they have a different opinion of what would work, it wouldn't then be hard for them to fork the story with a similar underlying exercise and implement that. I feel like, I guess I'm arguing for more upfront design of an exercise, or more upfront decisions by a track implementer of an exercise, so that there is less constant changing and less of those consequences. But it definitely will, like, if we go down this route, it will change the way track maintainers need to think about those exercises, I guess. Rahul says, would it be easier to have permanently open issue for each exercise in each track and an owner assigned to it? Any user issues raised about it can be mentioned and linked in that thread so they can action it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there are definitely ways we could do that. I don't know if having one issue is necessarily the thing. We can have tags for issues that mean they automatically get done, and things automatically get assigned on code owners and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I guess being able to drop out and have that person assigned makes sense. I think, thanks, Rahul. I think it's a philosophical question for Exercism, and it's not one that I feel like I want to be the one answering. I feel like it's a conversation that maintainers need to draw consensus on, based on your experience in implementing and maintaining exercises. But I feel like the thing that I've not yet done, and I feel like the bit that is really my job, is to lay out the pros and cons in like a central place where we understand the trade-offs that need to be made and the longer term way that these things affect stuff. Like things like I've just said about invalidating the representations is probably not obvious to people who are having this debate at the moment, but it's something that has huge consequences in 12 months from now, when suddenly we have 100 new solutions being posted a day that would have had automatic feedback and now don't. So there's a lot of, I think, consequences that I've got in my head that I need to just get out and then ask for comments on to build that out. Brooks.
Okay, so do we have a GitHub discussion up for this, or has that been too scary to create so far?
Make one.
So no, but mainly because of what I've just said, which is I feel like I need to start it because I feel like I understand the long-term consequences a lot of this, and they're not, I haven't got round to documenting them yet. So and what I don't want is everyone to go off and come up with some great solutions that are great solutions, but out without having the context of all of my concerns for the next 12 months. But it's something that now, there's a strong argument for me prioritizing. But yeah, go on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think that, it's a good idea. I agree that you should probably be the one to initially lay out the things. When it comes to the whole idea of having like I guess what we call it, the design.md right now for version 3, where we have things that are in and out of scope. If we did make that a more formalized part of these specs, is there a reason that we still need an owner for a thing, or is it easier then to just look at a document and see, well, okay, this obviously falls outside of the lines of that, or am I missing something?
No, it's a good question. I guess the design file will never be comprehensive, so that's where that's where at some point we have to have a decision making process. Now, the obvious thing is to say, well, let's just let the community decide. But that's sort of where all of these issues came from, was that, what is really important to have a UTF-8 for one track is equally important not to have UTF-8 for another track. So I know it's time. I'm going to keep talking for a couple of minutes. I think this is helpful. But I promise that everything I say here will end up on a GitHub issue if you do need to leave at this stage anyway. Yeah, so the idea of having an owner is that it means it's not, I guess primarily it means it's not always falling on me to make that decision. And I've got no issue making that decision, but I feel like I really don't want to be like chief maintainer, because I'm not a maintainer. Like that's literally the thing I'm not, is that. And I try and have done to always make sure I'm not involved in that. Now, this might be a great thing for Katrina to do, because that has very much been Katrina's role in the past, but she's she's not massively active right now. And so at some point it either needs to fall to somebody who has that authority, and that could get frustrating for people, or it could be crowdsourced. So if you're the one that puts the energy into making that exercise in the first place, you then maintain the sort of power to choose how that exercise evolves over time. And if you've not scoped that exercise, you're the one that has the best sort of idea of how you would have made that decision if the question had been asked. So it's like that exercise has a spiritual guardian sort of thing. And that feels fairer to me than somebody making an exercise and then me suddenly being like, oh no, your exercise must conform in this way. So yeah, that's why I feel like having owners is a good thing. And if there are people that have obviously added, Jeremy the Dictator is what I'm trying to avoid here. Thanks, DJ. And so, you know, if there are exercises there that people have obviously added, so like the resistor color series that DJ and Maud, I think primarily, sorry if I've just insulted anyone who worked on that, like made, like they would just fall under DJ's remit now, and Maud if she comes back
And
involved.
Eric.
And Eric, I couldn't remember if Eric had or hadn't. Thanks, Eric. Whereas exercises that have been like taken from somewhere else, or where that maintainer is no longer involved, we probably assign to somebody. Eric, you probably get the fun of that. Or we divvy them up between people that want to take them on. Like I wouldn't mind each. But I think having that ownership would just be nice for the community. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's my take on it. The other thing with problem specs that is super problematic, and this is where I feel like it really blew up, and I think the groundwork for it all blowing up had been laid by what I've just discussed, but where it really blew up was a difference on opinion of what testing is, which is pretty fundamental, where some maintainers wanted to have like unit tests of each small bit of functionality within exercises. Some people wanted to have like exercise input output tests. There was proper computer science words that people used that I can't remember for these things, but fundamentally I guess there was a different level of abstraction that people wanted their tests to do. Like
it was having the program as a library or having it as an application. That was the biggest discussion.
Yeah, they were the fundamental things. So the reason I talk less about that one is I feel like I am much happier just to make an arbitrary decision on what I think about that and enforce that. The problem with that is that programming languages do just differ as to whether they treat their software as it should be tested like a library or an application. But I just don't feel like there's a way around that that's good, other than we say problem specification treats your tests in this way. If you want to use problem specifications, you have to adhere to this sort of thing. And if you want to test properties, or if you want to, I don't know what the things are, but then you have to do that in your own language as your own implementation. And it could be that actually at that point, someone wants to maintain a fork of problem specifications with the tests pivoted to this other format. And I'd be totally cool with that as well. But I think for Exercism, I want to see like 1 or 2 public methods that are tested, which is generally the interface of that thing as a program, and then some output that's expected. And that's to me what a Exercism exercise is. So that would be the decision I think I would make on that. And so then it comes down to whether there is enough of a disagreement about that in the community, and there may well be, I think there was before, that actually we just have problem specs dash application and problem specs dash library, or whatever we call them. Again, computer science words, Eric's cringing. But again, I love putting horrific solutions out there because then you all can find better solutions to that. Maybe we have 2 sets of tests.json or whatever it is, one that's in one format and one that's in the other, and we fork at that level instead of forking at the repo level.
All right, I won't go into much detail here, but what I think is part of the issue here is that people are just, they have these generators, and they're not used to just generate the exercise, but also to update the exercise. So I'm fine with test generators just doing the initial, hey, give me the scaffold exercise based on the canonical data. But then after that, you should just be very careful. Not just because now you're linking, as DJ said it very nicely, the problem specs dictate how the exercise looks like instead of the other way around. So the idea was that the test generator would use the canonical data as a basis for your exercise. So, for example, in one of the generators that I made, I did some things that changed the exercise because it didn't really fit mine. I could work around the canonical data, but if I couldn't, I would just not use the canonical data. I would just grab it once and then do my own version of it. So I think a lot of the issues are that people are, well, hard linked to the problem specifications repo, whereas they shouldn't do that. And there are multiple reasons for that too. and also because you really wanted to make it nice for your language. And some exercises just don't make sense just copying them from the problem specifications repo. You have to tweak them a little bit just to highlight your language's strengths, etc. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll just
I
put it
agree.
out there.
And Mark said the same, just as you started speaking in the comments. Like, I think that's totally true. The problem, of course, is that if we give everyone a system where they can link to canonical data and auto update from them, people are going to want to do that. And this is what I mean about how this
But we
didn't
don't.
have.
People have to build it themselves.
Yeah, but as in yeah, I agree. That's what should be happening.
But it's a conscious decision that they made.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And this is what I mean about why I feel like this part is less of an issue, because I feel like I have a strong opinion on what an exercism exercise in problem spec should look like in terms of an interface of tests. And DJ's going mental about the time, absolutely kicking off. Yeah, we'll stop in a sec. I need dinner soon. But yeah, like, I feel like we can make a decision on this, and we can just say, if this doesn't, you should treat this as a basis. Exactly all the words you just said, Eric. I think,
or link to a version, whatever.
I agree. On the flip side, what I don't want to do though is for all of the tracks that would disagree with that like opinion I'm laying out of what an exercism exercise should be there. I feel like if there is another thing we can do to make their lives easier, Eric, just a reminder for you, need to save all this text, because as soon as I click the close call, it all disappears. So I'm going to mute you. You're typing loud. So yeah, if there is an easy way that we can do the same thing, like having a fork of the tests in there that works for the library thing, that a group of maintainers can keep in a format that they want to, I don't feel like that's a negative thing. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable thing for those other maintainers to do. I just feel like we need some rules and some guidance on this. And one of the problems in all of these big discussions that happened was that no one was making this decision, because I didn't have the brain space to work it out. And so I think it needs some decisions making, some rules laying down, and then something that says, if there's a way that you can, and then, an option that says, we can do this to make your life easier, but you're going to have to maintain this. And then I think the first set of problems we talked about, having a design document, having an owner, and making sure that that design document and the rules in there conform to Exercism's exercise design document, which means you can't, in your design document, says, I want all the tests to be totally different in this exercise because it's a special case. There's a hierarchy of decisions in that. Well, look, I'll write all that up, and then I'll get absolutely fucking slaughtered on Nishi next week, and that'll be really fun for me. I'll have massive fights with everyone. If those of you that thought this was a great idea today could, come up with some more proactive ideas, but I might make just a total ban on that exercise about adding emoji reactions to things. If I could turn emoji reactions off on GitHub issues, because they're so, every time someone puts a down vote on one of my posts, I literally feel like quitting Exercism. I'm like, it's such a negative like response that someone can just downvote you without commenting. I like that Stack Overflow makes you pay with your reputation, pay with your blood to downvote. But yeah, so I'll do that. Yeah, we'll see the fun that happens. If you could all think about the contributions and the maintaining stuff on the V3 dashboard, just the more ideas, the better. Like, if you've got half-baked thoughts, shove them in an issue. I'm going to try and be quite active on that, just like putting together a product roadmap to get that really good. So just keep throwing your ideas in. I'm actually thinking as well, maybe just putting a document together that is a product roadmap that we can just work through, that gives everyone some visibility on what's coming. So yeah, open issues there. And yeah, this was fun. I mean, I think I talked even more than ever, but I think we made some progress. Thank you for totally derailing it, DJ, and taking us into problem specs land, but it's probably been helpful. and I will see all of you and DJ's cap, which will no doubt be a little bit longer still next week. Yeah, next week. Thank you all very much. Have a great week, and thank you all for all you're doing. Bye.